Hi viewers, I'm Purple Celery. Thanks for joining me today. So here we are, staring down the barrel of a brand new series of Doctor Who. Before I get into the review of this episode, I want to share a few of my initial thoughts about the future of Doctor Who. There has been a lot of speculation that the show is essentially up in the air. I've heard that season 3 isn't going to be green-lit until the powers that be see how season 2 goes. There's been talk about Ncuti Gatwa leaving. I've heard things that the production crew have essentially packed up and been told to go home, that the set's been closed down. There's been rumours that the BBC is going to put the show on hiatus for 5 years, 10 years, maybe even a generation. So the future of the show does look as though it's up in the air at the moment. This is slightly concerning for me because I feel like last season of Doctor Who, season 1, it was okay, it was enjoyable, but was it brilliant? Was it spectacular? I don't think that anybody could sort of put their hand on heart and say that it was. It did have some flaws, namely I found the companion a bit genetic. I didn't quite get that connection between Ruby and the Doctor. The season finale was a bit of a fizzer. The whole reveal with Ruby's mum was quite anticlimactic. Tonally, it was a bit all over the place. So yeah, it did have its flaws. The good news is that some of those things are issues that can quite readily be tweaked, be fixed. But my concern is that season 2 was filmed very soon after the wrapping of season 1. They were almost filmed back to back, and I just don't know whether Russell T Davies, the showrunner, has really had enough time to take the issues, the critique, the feedback on board and make those tweaks in time for season 2. So this is my long-winded way of saying that if season 2, or series 15, whatever you want to call it, knocks it out of the park, then I think that bodes well for the future of the show, for season 3 being green-lit. But if we get more of the same, if we get more of what we got last year, then unfortunately I think there are going to be some very real questions hanging over the future of Doctor Who. So now that I've said my piece, let's crack on with the review. So episode 1 was called The Robot Revolution, and it's an episode where the new companion very much takes centre stage. I really enjoyed the opening montage that we see of Belinda, of her job as a nurse. We get a real sense of a woman who gets a bit exasperated at times, but ultimately is very kind and very professional. Interestingly, we then see that Belinda lives in a share house. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first modern companion we've seen to have lived in a share house. Normally they live with their families, with their parents, or by themselves, or I guess in the case of Amy and Rory, with their spouse. I also got the sense from Belinda that she was a bit stuck in the past. She was somebody who maybe hasn't quite reached her full potential. And we see that with little signs, such as the fact that she's still got that framed star certificate thingo hanging above her bed, even though it was given to her as a teenager 17 years ago, and she hasn't seen her old boyfriend for about 16 years. Later on in the episode, we get a callback to Belinda's profession as a nurse, when we see her helping the injured rebels. I really like that scene because one of my main gripes about Chris Chibnall's era was that the occupations of the companions were often dropped and forgotten about. A classic example was Yaz, because she was a police officer, and I feel that Chibnall could have lent so much more into that, but he didn't. It was almost forgotten about after the first episode. And then, of course, we had Belinda offering to sacrifice herself to the AI machine for the sake of peace. And we also had a great scene at the end where she stands up to the Doctor, where she reprimands him for taking and using her DNA without permission. I really enjoyed that. It made a nice change from companions who just hero worship the Doctor without calling him out on not so great behaviour. So all in all, I do really like Belinda. I feel like we're invested in her and we've gotten a good sense as to who she is. Moving on, I want to talk about the scene where Belinda is kidnapped by the robots. I felt that was a little bit cartoonish. It was almost played for laughs. I mean, in real life, if you had like a bunch of robots who came to your house and started ripping it apart and were threatening to kidnap you and take you to a distant planet, surely you'd be terrified and traumatized. So I just felt that it wasn't quite in sync with the rest of the episode. And yeah, look, the whole dead cat thing, you know, I can see how that might be a bit disturbing to people who like cats and own cats. From a visual perspective, I also thought that the robot spaceship and the robots themselves looked a bit cartoonish. They were almost like toys. I would have liked to have seen more of a grittier feel, a grittier look to them. I did, however, enjoy the scene in the throne room where the Doctor conveys to Belinda that the robots can't understand every ninth word. I thought that was a really, really clever scene. I have to confess that I wasn't overly fazed by Sasha 55's death because we hardly got to know her. The second half of the episode did weave in some nice themes about the dangers of over-reliance on artificial intelligence and also the whole toxic masculinity, incel, etc., etc. They played out quite nicely, I thought. We do have some nice mysteries to explore. For example, how Belinda's star certificate thingo got to the robot planet. There's also the case of Mrs. Flood. It looks like she's back again, and this time she's Belinda's neighbour. Not sure if she's either moved house or whether Belinda lives near Ruby. I think it's the former, but don't quote me on that. There's also the mystery of why the TARDIS can't land back on Earth on the 24th of May 2025. Although I did just question, why doesn't the Doctor just try for the 23rd of May or the 25th of May? You know, what's the date here and there? At the very least, he could have tried to do some experimenting and just, you know, see what happens, see if the TARDIS still bounces back, so to speak. Now, speaking of the Doctor, I was a bit disappointed to see him crying again. And yeah, look, I guess in this case it did fit in with the plot in that he just lost Sasha 55, his best friend on the robot planet. But I feel equally that the Doctor crying all the time, it loses its impact over a while. And the Doctor has pretty much cried in every episode to date. So when he does cry over something that is kind of justified, it just, you know, it just feels a bit meh, you know? I do enjoy watching Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor, but sometimes I just wish that he'd tone things down a little bit. All the babes and bells and bouncing around, I feel like this Doctor's best moments often come during the quieter scenes or when he's righteously angry or upset. A classic example is of the finale of Dot and Bubble, where he was trying to save the girl who didn't want to be saved. So let's just see how that plays out in future episodes. But yeah, I just wish that Gatwa would just dial things back a notch. Overall, I found The Robot Revolution to be a solid season opener. It was definitely better than Space Babies. I'd probably give this about a 7 out of 10. But as always, these are just my thoughts. I would love to hear what you guys thought of the episode, so please leave your comments in the comments section below. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And I'll be back next week to review the second episode. I don't know what the title is, but it's the one with the creepy animations. So until then, everyone, take care, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.